And so we're going to talk a little bit about how to not screw up supply chain, how to not do that. So we're going to play a game. Anybody here like games? So we're going to play a game, and the way that this game works is that you each get to be a supplier, or get to pretend to be a supplier to Ubiquity Robotics. So can everybody sort of grab a few dice? Just one dice each. We've got about 50 of them, right? So we're going to start with we're going to play the supplier game. Here, just grab some dice. Hand them out.
Good day.
The way that this game works is that you get to pretend to be a company that's trying to launch a product. The Hot New Hardware, this is a game that I do when I teach supply chain in Stanford. Okay? Hot New Hardware startup Widget Inc. is about to go into production. Widget Inc. has developed a product, has a contract manufacturer, and has a supply base. Each person in the room, or each person with a dice, is one of Widget Inc.'s suppliers. Rolling one represents an inability to supply. And the first person that rolls a 1 gets one of these cards. Now these cards, on it is a situation that actually corresponds to a supply chain issue that I have personally dealt with, or somebody who I personally know has dealt with. Now these are not all situations, these are not situations from Ubiquity Robotics, these are from all over the place, but they're people that I personally know, or I personally have had to deal with these things when I was a supply chain professional. Widget Inc. has several orders pending over the next few months. For the purpose of the game, 5 months. Each game is 1 round. And just to make it interesting, 1 month of orders contributes $1 million to an overhead of 0.5. We just have 1.5 million in funding remaining. So it's just a sort of hypothetical situation to give you a sense for what it's like to have supply chain issues. Okay, so if we can get started, we're in month 0. We have 1.5 million in cash remaining. And we all have to roll a dice. Anyone who rolls a 1, please raise your hands. Okay, anyone who rolls a 1. Okay, we've got a few suppliers who have failed. In fact, a whole bunch. Oh, wow, this is like...
Did you weight these dice?
No, I did not weight these dice. I did not weight these dice. Okay, we're going to, you get to pick a card, any card you like. And just, okay, so please read out what's on the card.
Flood at supplier factory.
Flood at supplier factory. Yes, I have seen this one before. I had some suppliers out in Thailand, and their factory got completely flooded. They shut down. Okay, so unfortunately for Widget Inc., we are now at 1.0. What's going on? Unfortunately for Widget Inc., we are now at 1 million in cash. Right? Okay, now let's roll the dice again. Okay, we got some more one. Okay, here we go. So let's go. So yes.
Okay. Inter-ethnic violence, aka civil war, erupts at Central African mine supplying raw materials.
This is actually something that I only had actually a relative of mine encountered about 2 weeks ago. Came in and he was, wow, you know, the mine, there's this, essentially civil war has erupted, we can't supply. Okay, so Widget Inc. is really kind of out of luck. They're at 500,000. Okay, let's roll the dice again and we'll get a couple more in. All right, now this is really what it feels like. Here we go, we're going to have a couple because we're running out. Here we go. Okay.
Oh, you just rolled a 1.
Okay, this is really what it feels like to be honest. Okay, so can we read a few more? Actually, here's one more. Who else rolled a 1? Okay, just read out some of the issues that our suppliers are facing right now.
Negligent failure to forecast demand.
Yep.
Blockbuster product, and to correct that forecast to production. That's right. This is one that I actually dealt with. This was a company that launched a $2 billion product, and they had 1/10 of the production capacity needed to do it, right? So yeah, that's any others?
Snake infestation in supplier factory.
That was a friend of mine that actually had a snake infestation. They had to shut down the factory, right? right? I mean, this is real stuff. I mean, you know, this is like every day you go up, you got to go to your meeting, and what the heck's going to happen today, right? What else?
Here we got an insect infestation.
Insect infestation, yeah.
Fire at factory that supplies components to suppliers.
Fire at factory that supplies components. Anyone else? Anyone else? Yeah.
Tsunami.
Tsunami. That's right. And this one was really interesting because it was a tsunami and it didn't affect any of our suppliers. Not one. However, because the tsunami happened, other people couldn't get their parts. And so they leaned on the people in our supply chain who then suddenly went on distribution. They said, well, you know, so that's what happened. You know, we started to suffer even though there was nothing affected in our supply chain at all, directly. But indirectly, these sorts of things can happen. So Widget Inc. unfortunately has gone bankrupt. They have run out of cash, right, after only 3 months because they didn't design their supply chain correctly, right? So what are the things, you know, this is not very good. I mean, none of this is my fault, right? As the guy that's running Widget Inc. None of this is my fault. What should I do about it?
Buy US.
Buy US?
Yeah,
Same problems happen in the US too, right? I mean, it's not just the...
Who manufactures capacitors in the US?
Okay, you know, so...
Distribute your risk.
Distribute your risk, right? Distribute your risk. I mean, I always say you don't have a minimum viable product when you have a prototype. You have a minimum viable product when you have a prototype that you can manufacture, right? So we talk about lean methods and lean product development. You know, when it comes to hardware, you need to have something that you can actually manufacture. So absolutely, just you try to spread your risk. So what can we do? Spread your risk. What else can we do? When you say spread your risk, what do you mean by that?
Redundant suppliers.
Redundant suppliers, dual source. Yeah. What else?
Building house.
What's that?
Building house.
Build in-house sometimes, or sometimes maintain stock in-house. What else?
Fewer parts.
Fewer parts, that's right. Fewer parts. So simplify supply chain, design suppliers out, assess suppliers for reliability and mitigate issues, keep burn rate low, right? One reason why Ubiquity Robotics is operating with no office at the moment is for this reason. We're going to talk a little bit about this and then we're going to replay the game again, 5 rounds, right? So absolutely simplify supply chain, reduce the number of parts. This is a chart. So I gave out roughly 40 die. That was no randomly selected number. That was because version 2 of our robot had more than 50 different suppliers. Version 1 and version 2 wound up having more than 50 different suppliers, right? Version 3, we reduced it to 22. Version 4, these are suppliers that are essential to the production of the robot. Version 4 had 7, and version 5, this guy, only has 3 major suppliers, right? Only 3 major suppliers. And we got there by designing out things that we needed to have. So for example, version 4 had a strap to hold the battery in place. Oh, by the way, yes, that's right. Support us on Indiegogo, March 10th.
Got it, $2, please.
So,
20.
Burn rate's going up there, Dave.
So combine parts into one. So you know, we did things like we took DC-DC converters on the same PCB as motor controllers. Design out parts with only one supplier. So for example, we had on V4 a high current on-off switch. We painfully redesigned that so that it would be a low current turn-on switch with solid state devices on the PCB. Could be manufactured by a PCB manufacturer. Didn't require a separate guy who specialized in making these high current switches. Completely designed that out. Switch solutions within the capability of your core supplier. So for example, you see on this robot, we have batteries that are held in by foam inserts rather than straps. Why? Because we had to have foam anyway for our packaging. Our supplier could do foam, they couldn't make straps, they had to have another supplier for straps. So we designed them out. We changed the design so that we could fit into the supply chain that was available. Get your suppliers to source minor components and work with them to solve issues that this may arise. So caster wheels. Oh, caster wheels. The weeks that I spent in China getting my my supplier to redesign this part here for the caster wheels that are there. I mean, literally sitting there in the factory, they produced caster wheels, they did a design, They didn't work. We had to do the design again. You know, we didn't work. We had to do the design again, just so that the caster wheel can do this. And of course, at the same time, do this, right? Right. We needed to do both.
Wow.
And literally weeks trying to do that kind of change so that we could eliminate. Because previously I was sourcing the casters myself. We wanted them to source it so that I could eliminate a supplier, but you know, created all kinds of other problems. And you know, generally, you know, the underlying theme here is rather than design your supply chain for your robot, design your robot for your supply chain, because then it's going to make your life a lot easier. But you know, these are all things that we did. Yeah.
Quick question: aren't you just putting the demand for different number of suppliers behind the guy who's doing your PCBs? He now has 40 different suppliers.
No, no, absolutely not. Because there are components that in, for example, the switch situation. There are components in there which, you know, it's a completely different way of solving the problem. You're solving the same problem, but with a different solution, right? So because there's lots of different ways to solve any given design issue on your robot. There's lots of different ways in which you can solve any design issue on the robot, you need to find solutions that come into the robot that you've got. So for example, this robot here is entirely made of, almost all of it is made of the same type of sheet metal, and it's all riveted together, because that's what our suppliers can do. Right? We started with a welded design. Turns out we couldn't get good quality on the welding. Right? So everything on here is riveted together. There are no welds at all, because finding consistent quality welding was not something within our supply capability. Right? I think it's also important to think about this thing here is probably the last thing that you actually want to do. Right? You want to do things like this, or like this, or like this. This, you're right, has a little bit of what you're talking about in there. But in general, we try to avoid that one, go up here. Okay, so those are some of the things that we did to try to reduce the complexity of our supply chain. So we got down to 3 suppliers, and then of course try to dual source everything that we can. So the supply chain is simple. Now what do you do? Now the other thing that you want to do is try to actually assess supplier risk. And this is what that assessment looks like. You assess on a number of different dimensions. Operational risk. I'm going to be talking more about operational risk in a second. Quality risk, employee injury, labor unrest, country political risk, port transportation risk, credit risk, catastrophic site failure, natural disaster. Right? Try to look at all of these different things. I'm going to go in a little bit more detail, but I'm going to try to sort of move quickly over this. You know, the operational risk is the one that I actually spend most time, well, I spend the least amount of time, but probably the most amount of my mind share on, which is the failure of the factory as a system. And the sort of things that I look for when I go to a factory, I visit every factory that goes into this product. Do they have an operational system in place? Do they have a clean, well-organized factory with standard work, continuous improvement, and JIT, just in time? Do they track and equip and improve equipment uptime? Those are the things that I'm looking for to see whether or not the supplier has the operational capability to deliver not just 1, but 1,000 of these things. I look to see if they've got a quality system in place. Do they have a quality mindset? Is the CEO a quality-oriented individual? Quality is one of those things that rots from the top down. If you have the CEO does not have a quality mindset, then you can be damn sure that you're going to get junk out of the factory. Employee availability. You know, do they have an employee safety program? Do they have a lost accident program in place? You want to make sure that the employees will not get hurt. Strike, labor unrest, is there a history of that? Country political unrest. Obviously, if you're running mining in Africa, this is a big one, right? And I know lots of people who do. Port risk, credit risk, catastrophic site failure. A competent assessor will tell you whether the factory has more than 95% of the floor area covered with sprinklers. Right? Because factories do burn down, and sprinklers make that a lot less likely. And then natural disaster. Are there cataclysmic effects that can affect production? This is real stuff, right? I mean, like I said, You know, there were, in those cards that I handed out, there was floods, there were tsunamis. That stuff really does happen, and it really will ruin your day if you're working in supply chain, right? Then you look at these sorts of things. Oh, I said I would talk a bit more about operational risk. You know, I've done operations for a long, long time. I mean, I in fact started building robots because I spent too much time on the business side of things and too much time dealing with supply chain issues, and I wanted to do something more technical. And we started building robots, and that was lots of fun, and now I find I'm dealing with all the operational and business issues again. Right? Is that a question, or?
Well, yeah, I just want to say this list is fantastic.
Yeah,
is this
that's
something
amazing.
that you've compiled yourself and over your experience, or is this sort of a known matrix that people work from?
This list is, I mean, these are relatively standard. This list was compiled with me and actually a supply chain colleague who's done a lot of supply chain work before. Actually, is one of the people on the Ubiquity Robotics team helped me put this together as we were doing our supplier assessments. She was an individual who did supply chain for Toyota Numi and Cypress and SunPower. So you know, she's been around the block a lot of times, and things like this have come up in, you know, many studies that I've done with other people and so forth. So, I mean, is it completely standard? No, but I think most good supply chain professionals would have something like this in their repertoire. Okay, so yeah, assess all of these things.